Hi everyone, I'm Neil from Aptos. I'm going to be moderating today. I just got off a 7-hour flight from New York and I am very jet lagged, so I'm going to try and make this interesting and fun and not doze off. But with that, let's kick off with some introductions from the panelists. Emilio.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Emilio from Aave Labs. I handle everything DeFi related to Aave Labs. I'm one of the original developers of the Aave protocol, together with other developers that are here also as well in the venue. And yeah, happy to be here.
Hey everybody. Test. Hey everybody, I'm Alex, co-founder, CEO of Kahn Labs. I've been building an on-chain order book for the Aptos blockchain for 2 years now. Also served as an advisor to Aave on the Move programming side of things as a sort of ambassador from Aptos. And I'm glad to be talking about all things beyond EVM today, and in particular some monolithic technology.
Hi everyone, I'm Jelena. Shout out to the organizers for this very comfortable setup. It's usually not this nice. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Noble. Noble is a Cosmos chain bringing native stablecoins and real-world assets to the Cosmos ecosystem. I've been a Cosmos contributor for a number of years, and excited to talk about the kind of modular app chain thesis today.
Hi from me as well. Thodoris. I think from my name and my accent you can guess where I'm from. I'm the head of blockchain partnerships at Chaining Labs, there for the last 3 years. Thank you all for the amazing venue and for being here as well. It's great to see so many people. Thanks for attending our panel. Really interested in our conversation. And I promise, Neil, given that now it's what, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. for you?
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll make it spicy and spotty.
Thank you. Cool. With that, let's start off with addressing the elephant in the room. Right now, it's an interesting time in the market for everybody that's here. Are we back? Are we not back? How are you guys feeling about builder sentiment? And I guess I would love to hear the spiciest take first. So I'll take a volunteer.
I mean, bears are for builders. I don't know. I think if you're building something meaningful and useful for millions, billions of people, I think now is a really good time to focus. And I actually think this market correction with meme coins and celebrity coins are actually probably for the best. A lot of folks, I think, in DeFi summer were able to really onboard, with these DeFi primitives and really actually do interesting, creative things. And I think this past cycle, was a bull run just like we had in DeFi summer, but was maybe less, call it, innovative. And so I think bears are for builders, and I think it's a good thing. I don't know if that's spicy enough.
For me, it's all gambling, and we should all leave. No, just kidding. No, I mean, since the first moment I have been in the space, I have never seen a time at which development actually slowed down. The more we move forward, the more developments and advancements there are. So from a builder perspective, I have never seen in more than almost 7 years now that I've been in DeFi and crypto, a moment in which I said, wow, we stopped innovating or we stopped developing. Actually, it's the opposite. The more we move forward, the more new technologies there are. Ethereum is scaling with L2s. There are new networks coming up like this cycle. There was Aptos, there was Solana, there is Stone Network with different technologies, different approaches. DeFi, we are coming up with Aave before. I mean, in terms of development, it actually never stopped or never really slowed down. When I look at the market as a builder, sometimes I get a bit depressed because I see some narratives that are a bit you see narratives that are honestly sometimes promoting more the quick cash grab rather than the for the technology, so. Yeah. Whenever I see the meme coin boom or whatever other weird narrative that doesn't really fit my way of thinking about the space. For some people can be depressing. at this point, I'm kind of used to it. So yeah, I don't feel it anymore.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
it is something that is in there.
Yeah.
We
Well, Alex, as a new builder-ish with a new protocol that came to market last year, how are you feeling about things?
I agree with the general takes that like getting your head down and building and filtering out the noise is probably the best thing you can do for your own sanity in this industry. And I would characterize the evolution of blockchain tech more generally in the last like decade and a half, that we're finally at an inflection point where the infrastructure is almost good enough for web scale. I think that there are very promising chains, and I think the most high performance ones like Aptos, and I think Solana proved out this sort of narrative that the monolithic, like high throughput chain can actually serve web scale demand. I think that it's finally here, and people are starting to understand the kinds of things you can do with that. That's a very qualitative shift in the kinds of products that can be implemented. And I think there's this sort of funny paradox, like when people invented, I think Facebook is a good example, and they thought, oh, this is going to be this super connective social network, it's going to elevate global consciousness, and then people were sharing cat pictures on it. And then blockchain is, I think, facing a similar moment where everything is actually serving like these thousands of transactions per second. Millions of people around the world can plug into this thing, and we're using it to like speculate on celebrities. And whatever, like that's fine, let people do what they want to do with it. It's funny, I guess, in some sense, and for some people it may be depressing because we have these, I think, very grandiose visions about wanting to build the future of finance. And I do think that comes. It's just an interesting moment when the very first uptake of the web scale platform is to do more for fun things. But again, if people are going to be doing for fun things, at least let them do it out in the open in a transparent platform. At least have it so that Robinhood can't just shut down the order book on the buy side when they feel like it. At least make these systems decentralized. I think that's still a compelling alternative to what is currently in existence. And in terms of sentiment, corrections, price, or whatever, maybe the flying car isn't quite here yet, but the distributed web scale supercomputer is, and people were very quick to use it for some things, and then maybe greasing all the wheels of global commerce comes a little later, but it can certainly support that demand, and it's an exciting time to be building here.
Okay, so we got pro meme coin over there and somewhat anti meme coin over here. Should we have a little bit of a debate? How are you guys feeling?
Let's go for it. I just finished a debate on crypto-backed versus fiat-backed stablecoins. So
Okay.
I am in the mood for.
Please.
Can I
Yeah.
jump in? So I'm not anti like meme coins. I'm not anti like speculation or like gambling or anything like this. I'm just anti like non-innovative products, and I actually don't know what is that innovative about deploying like some contract with some coin, Bowden coin, and then like having, you can like bootstrap like some liquidity pools with some initial liquidity, like that's pretty cool, like on Solana, and then people can like buy Bowden, and then like because it's like fraction of a cent, it like goes like haywire. Like, is that innovative? I don't know. Like, I think like these DeFi primitives we had in DeFi Summer were innovative. I don't know if that's like that innovative. I think it's cool from a marketing perspective and like a narrative perspective, but like what are the actual fundamentals there? Like it's not like when like Uniswap, like when we had like the original AMMs, and like that was really cool, right? Like, is this interesting from that perspective?
I would submit that the interesting element is seamless productization of these things, regardless of what kind of value maybe is attributed to the specific use case. These things can operate now with near sub-second finality on certain platforms. The UX is seamless. It doesn't go down most of the time, and it's starting to get on par with enterprise grade like cloud compute. And that is what I view what we're building as the next generation of cloud compute. And so I think that there is a time and a place for proving grounds, and I suppose maybe this is one of those. I came into this obviously to build perhaps more lofty things in the on-chain finance, but I don't think that building new things that are fun and I guess bring people joy and enjoyment and engagement are necessarily problematic if they aren't inventing a new kind of wheel. I think that the integrative synthesis of all these things is actually a very compelling narrative that hasn't been seen yet. I mean, sure, in 5-7 years ago there was the ability to trade on chain, but that was only when some very small subset of current users were using it, and even then the gas fees were so much higher. And so now only people who maybe have had ETH bags for a decade are willing to trade on ETH-L1 because they can afford it. But for most people, that isn't a viable alternative and is not a compelling alternative to existing on-chain or to existing traditional financial systems. But we're getting to this point where there are things you really only can do on-chain, and they are faster and less expensive than traditional finance. And I think that the first kicks and starts of this have been maybe unsavory things for some people, but I think that we should let a thousand flowers bloom, and we should applaud everyone who is building something if it's something that can't be done somewhere else and it's something that's being done seamlessly and at web scale.
I honestly think that we are assessing everything now from a pure technical perspective. I don't think that it's only about the technical perspective, like whether there is good innovation or bad innovation. Some will be viewed from the infra perspective, which is where we're at as well. Some will be viewed from the perspective of how can we use that attention to bring more people in, more developers, more users. Whether that's a fun thing, might not be the innovation we need, but we need to have ways that we can capitalize on these opportunities to bring more people in the space to grow it, as we discussed. So I think it's not only about the technical lens, it's about the business lens as well, especially if you are user-facing, which Chainlink more like on the infra side. So what do I know? But I think there is a good benefit there as well.
Cool. I think we're wildly off topic, and someone just gave me a signal. So let's take it back to, I think, taking it beyond EVM and what that looks like. I guess, Thodoris, you're at Chainlink, and so you're at the center of all of this, where you've historically been EVM only, recently expanded to non-EVM networks, with the most recent one being Aptos, of course. Can you share a little bit more about how you're seeing the market dynamics shift in real time beyond the EVM? How is the decision tree changing right now from only EVM to now EVM versus non-EVM?
Yeah, it's something that, of course, full transparency, Neil and I have discussed over the last few months quite a bit. If I'm to set a principle in place in the very beginning, I think the programming language kind of adoption game has very strong network effects. That's something that we discussed as well. When you have Solidity, you have the right tooling, the right infra for Solidity because it was built over time. So the network effect gets stronger and stronger to keep gaining in adoption. But there is no doubt that there are certain benefits to other languages, other programming languages, other environments that will be very beneficial to some use cases over others. So I think it's only a matter of time, and we already see it in a very practical way, especially in the Aptos ecosystem as well, where all the other pieces are getting into place because that adoption is getting there. And I think we will see more and more, like the Cosmos ecosystem is another one that has been around for a while. When everything comes into play and all the ancillary kind of tools and services are there, then we'll have also very big protocols adopting those new languages because there is clear benefits in doing so, whether it is in the efficiency of the language, whether it is in the scalability benefits, whether it is a successful new asset class that did not exist, it's not in the ERC20 standard, it sits outside, and it's a successful asset that has gotten a lot of liquidity as well. So all of these things will culminate into seeing more non-EVM adoption.
Yeah. And I guess, Emilio, you're over at Aave Labs, and you've been in the EVM ecosystem for quite some time, but you just started learning a new language, Move. You're experiencing this in real time. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's been for you and the team at Aave?
Yeah, for me it's been kind of refreshing a bit, to change perspective, on something that I have been very accustomed with, over the years. Whoever wrote a line of Solidity code knows, that there are many things that you need to be aware of. Writing something of the magnitude like the Aave protocol takes a lot of effort and a lot of mental fortitude also, because you wrote code that at the moment is holding 20 billions. So if there is a bug in there, then you probably are gonna get screwed sooner or later, you know.
Yes,
So
yeah.
this is something that we started when we started with the Aave protocol. I remember like DeFi was really small. Like the total TVL of DeFi was 50 million. So when we started, arguably with V1, maybe we were just starting. We didn't have the experience that we have now. We didn't really realize what was the potential, the magnitude of growth that DeFi could have. So V1 was probably, at that time, we were not following the best practice that we could have been following because of lack of experience, lack of tooling as well. Like we didn't have the tooling that we have, like we were using Truffle, and Truffle was and Ganache back in the days. It was very, very painful to work with these tools. And you know, so I remember like when we started implementing V1 and actually started getting traction, and we were so small that we were able to track all the deposits within. Like, so I knew a few people that were liquid in DeFi, and I was seeing the protocol growing, like 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. And I was asking to these people in Telegram, is that you who deposited? And they were, no, it's not me. Is that you deposited? No. So it was growing organically, you know. So
That's amazing.
And at that point, but it also got quite scary. I remember like the first months, I was not sleeping properly. I was waking up, oh my God, there is a bug on that line of the code. You know, like that's the intensity of writing.
And now how much TVL does Aave have?
Now there are 20 billion. I mean, the TVL, effective TVL is like around 12 billions, depending on market fluctuations, but asset under management, if you include like the borrowed assets, like it's more than 20.
Are you sleeping at night now?
I do sleep perfectly. It's like, you know, like a surgeon when you are starting and your hand is trembling a bit, but then after a while you get desensitized a bit. But the interesting thing about Move, like the way I approached it was like, okay, let's see what I can do differently. You know, that was the curiosity for me, the bit of fresh air. Yeah. Let's see what I can approach differently compared to what we have designed, what we implemented in the last years. And the first thing that immediately comes to the eye is that, of course, you have more computational power. In general, like Solidity is very constrained, even though some things are getting better now. So you still have like the contract size limit. You still have the problem with the stack too deep and so on and so forth. Like every time you start integrating contracts, and you need to be very, very careful whenever you use one storage slot more or less, because it's 20K gas, and like at times of congestion is maybe $50 more on one transaction, and so on and so forth. That, of course, is much less of a problem with layer 2s, although you still need to be mindful of computation for moments of high. In Aptos, what I have seen is that there is quite a different setup with the accounting, with the way that wallets are addressed and implemented, with the resources that are implemented. There is quite a different approach to the implementation, which has been interesting in the way that we have been adapting the architecture to the Move language and to the Aptos technology. And I'm pretty sure that the more we get confident with it, the more things we will be able to do.
Okay, so I think we've been on topic for a good amount of time, and thank you for the
again.
Aptos plugs. Thank you for doing my job. But I'd love to go back off topic and maybe open it up to another debate. Let's talk about monolithic versus modular. We have a good mix here, but maybe, Alex, do you want to take the monolithic approach, and Jelena?
Sorry.
Jelena.
And sure, I'll take the modular approach, but I have to define it first.
Please.
Okay. So up until now, I think we've been talking about more the monolithic kind of execution environment, right? We talked about like super high, transactions per second and things like this. So I come from the Cosmos kind of perspective or philosophy, which you can categorize as being more around this like modular thesis, which Obviously, right now Celestia is popularizing, but really what that means is you can customize sort of every level of the stack. So in Cosmos, we have sort of 3 levels of the stack. We have Tendermint, which is obviously the consensus mechanism. That's a BFT consensus mechanism. It's been actually forked and reworked for a number of many well-known chains like Binance Smart Chain, and back in the day, Terra obviously ran on Tendermint. And then you have the VM, or where applications are deployed, and you actually have optionality there. So you're not just necessarily running your application on EVM, which you can in Cosmos, but you're typically running it on the Cosmos SDK or Cosm Wasm, which is a smart contracting language. There's even talks of supporting the SVM and other VMs, which is super exciting. So being able to kind of pick that, choose your own adventure, is really important. And then at the highest level, you have IBC, which is the interoperability standard. So it's a non-custodial message passing protocol. You can think of it as an equivalent for TCP/IP, as TCP/IP, but for blockchains. So it's a way to send arbitrary data between various chains. Most of that data right now is token transfers and money, but it could really actually be anything. So obviously, when you separate the stack in that way, consensus, VM, interop, you can actually pick and choose. So I mentioned, Binance Smart Chain, they use Tendermint or a version of Tendermint, but obviously, they don't necessarily use other parts of the Cosmos stack. And there's many other examples I can point to that's more well known. And so for me, that's ultimately modularity, and what the modular thesis describes. It is being able to, effectively base your, rollup, your app chain, and optimize for, certain parts of the stack based on what your users need. So not every application will actually need 1 million, 1,000, billion transactions per second. I think that's something we forget about. That's a number that's thrown around because I think it makes sense for web app, super scalable kind of apps, but that's not necessarily needed for every type of application. And so again, you're optimizing for certain needs. So that's modularity, I guess. And
cool.
we
Alex?
can debate.
My response from the monolithic bias side of this would be, if Ethereum had launched and could handle 50,000 transactions per second, I think the entire modular narrative would never have existed. Most of, I think, the attempts at building modular strap-ons to Ethereum have really been an attempt to solve the problem of non-scalability by sharding state into different channels, by offloading onto centralized sequencers that are not actually a blockchain in some sort. And additionally, these introduce very high technical burdens for developers that most of them don't necessarily want configurability. I think having to add a new coin for every chain is a big friction point for users and developers. A lot of developers don't necessarily care about configuring all the different parameters they want for their execution environment. They just want something to run, and they want it to run fast. And then beyond that, the liquidity fragmentation is a big issue, especially when it comes to things like high-performance finance, when hundreds of milliseconds of latency can be the difference between getting burned on a trade or not. And even when you get down to monolithic performance, even less than that. I mean, when you're talking single shard execution for trading, HFT operates in sometimes the nanosecond realm. So all of this lost latency that's used communicating across different sharded state channels ultimately just inhibits the price discovery process. And most of the problems, I think, have been solved already to some extent by some of the existing high-performance monolithic chains. I think that part of the reason Solana has been so successful is that it has leaned into the web scale monolithic execution thesis. It's easier. Developers, there's one giant state channel, and all the liquidity is there, at least for that one ecosystem. And they write a program, it does exactly what they do. Other people can compose on top of it, and it's easy to use. And that composability is broken across when the modular approach is taken. And again, I think that all of this is really just solved by building a bigger, better, faster distributed supercomputer, which was, I think, initially a lot of the touted promise of the Ethereum ecosystem, that we're building the world computer. But I think that revolutionary idea was plagued by what a lot of engineering projects are plagued by, is that the V1 had some issues that didn't get revealed until it was in production, and at that point it's too late to go back and fix everything, and maybe the engineers have the foresight to build something better the next time around. And I think that collective knowledge has been instantiated in the Aptos blockchain because For example, it was incubated under years with essentially $1 billion of R&D bankroll under the Facebook banner. And if anyone can build a scalable web distributed system, it's Facebook engineers. So I think that a lot of the lessons that could have been learned from some of the scaling issues earlier on have been solved. And one of the amazing parts about this too is that all these hardware scaling issues that played out through the 60s, 70s, and 80s where software had to grow in tandem with hardware don't have to be speed played again because the hardware is already so good. At this point, it's really just writing better software. It's writing better consensus algorithms. We already have the cores. We already have, like memory is cheap. Hard drives are cheap. And so really the code is getting there. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think we're running out of time, but I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Do you think DYDX would have built their V4 on Solana? And why not, right? So, okay, there's like, there's levels to this game. There's levels to this game. So I think, again, if you have super specific needs, you're a very performant derivatives exchange, you have regulators looking after you, you have very specific needs for your order book because, from a decentralization perspective, the way that it's currently kind of running on ETH mainnet and then eventually on Starknet just doesn't fit your kind of decentralization concerns. Again, like these are go down the checklist of all of the things that you have to look at. There is, I will say this, there is no way the monolithic framework makes sense if you're getting specific. Yeah, fine. I think like thousands and millions of developers will not have all of those specific concerns. I think if you are as big of a project that has like people like staring at you and that has very specific concerns, you will inevitably have to optimize your execution environment. You will probably use Tendermint because it's the leasing BFT consensus engine. You will probably eventually discover the Cosmos SDK because it's the best way to build modules in Go. Like eventually you will get there because customizability is so important. I can go on, but at the end of the day, like the Libra project, like they used a fork of Tendermint. Like that's how it started. And like I think that's important to remember. People want secure, fault-tolerant distributed systems, and they want to be able to optimize their execution environment. And when you go up the stack, when you think about users and you think about apps, it's all downstream. It's all downstream, and especially, again, when you get to the level of like a DYDX, which eventually, of course, ended up building their V4 as a Cosmos chain. So that's modularity.
Alex, do you have a 30-second response to that? And then I have one more question for the panelists.
Yeah, so the extra configurability for the general purpose programmer introduces additional latency. If you have to interpret the SVM into this bytecode, into that code, it just makes everything ultimately slower. I think any protocol that is building its own specific execution environment has already decided that it doesn't necessarily need to plug into global liquidity. And if it wants to make that trade-off, then sure, individual apps can make their own side chains or app chains or whatever. But I think that the true value lies in bringing all of the liquidity into one composable venue and keeping it there.
Cool. Thanks. I have one last question. Maybe this is an opportunity for everyone to plug what they're working on and what they're excited about that's coming up next. Thodoris, we'll start with you. What's on the roadmap that you're really excited about at Chainlink?
Well, let me start first by saying I'm so glad I was not part of this debate. It really, everyone came in punching. It was great to be a spectator, I have to say. And I'm so glad that, to then circle back to your question, that from our side, I think I actually fully believe that we live in a world with both setups, because there are benefits to both. It might be that the monolithic one is where some trading activity is happening. It might be that on the modular one is where certain only use cases of a protocol operate, or there is issuance, because that's the governance that a chain will require. What I see from my side is the clear need for all of these to coexist and interoperate. And that's where the next steps for us lie, not only on the ecosystem as we know it in the different protocols and how they connect with different ecosystems, which they can do through Chainlink CCIP, but also how do we bring more participants in the ecosystem that they might choose one or the other, but they will come with their own assets, their own liquidity, and they will need secure middleware. And honestly, a lot of onboarding and explanation of how this industry and the stack works. And that's where we put a lot of focus. We heard before as well a lot about that, but I think that's where our next steps lie, supporting to protocols like Aave with Go cross-chain, growing the ecosystem from and connecting monolithic to modular, bringing new participants in through institutions. This is the main focus, without losing, of course, any focus and attention to the data business that we have supported from the very beginning. Like the DeFi was built on chain price feeds at first, and we keep evolving that function and bringing data streams as well into the market.
Thanks. Jelena?
I am really excited about new standards like interoperability, specifically IBC. I do see it as a really powerful way to actually bridge these worlds. Like to your point, I think there was a successful IBC connection established with Solana and Tendermint or the Cosmos ecosystem. So you can actually in the future have IBC transfers, to and from Solana and the more modular ecosystem, for example. So of course, it's not an either or, like monolithic or modular. I think it depends, again, from the perspective of the builder and how do you create your own kind of paradise and your dreams. And for me, it's always been this sovereign app chain thesis. But again, it's up to the individual, and I would never prescribe anything. Yeah, just really excited for Noble's perspective. Stablecoins, I didn't even talk about Noble, so yeah, we're really excited to be a stablecoin issuer for this emerging modular ecosystem of many roll-ups, many app chains that all need stable liquidity. And to your point, we do solve for liquidity fragmentation kind of as an infrastructure project. So yeah, we're continuing to solve for these pain points because they are real. I'm not trying to pretend like they don't exist, but it's something that can be solved ultimately. So yeah.
Cool. Alex?
Yeah, next up for Kahn Labs. So we've been productionizing some of our internal research on liquidity provisioning mechanisms into a fun consumer product that involves emojis. And we just started our closed alpha this week, so we'll be rolling things out more to the public in coming weeks. Everything we do is Apache 2.0 open source on GitHub, so if you really want the real alpha, it's on GitHub. Beyond that, we already shipped the Kahn flagship order book protocol on Aptos mainnet, and just long term, we're looking to continuously iterate on that and continue to contribute as an open source contributor to Aptos Core. Right now, working on Ledger hardware wallet key rotation. That's the open PR right now that we've got.
Let's
So lots of fun stuff at Kahn Labs. Just glad to be building on Aptos.
Cool. Close us out.
Obviously, for me, it's Aave before, because we have been putting a lot of thought on what we really need to improve what we already have. So that was a huge effort. It's been a huge effort, and we are already developing it, and that's pretty cool for me. It's the fourth time already that we start from scratch. So
nice.
That's pretty cool. Then, of course, there are many other developments that are happening. There is Go, that is going cross-chain. Of course, there is the Aptos deployment, and I can see Go at some point going to Aptos as well. I mean, there is a lot of interesting stuff happening. The funny part is that compared to, for example, when we released V3, the Aave DAO, it's probably actually, I will be a bit spicy here, but probably the only actually DAO that works. The only one that works, in the sense that we have, if I compare to when we released V3, right now there are at least another 3 service providers that actually develop for the DAO, paid by the DAO, completely independent from Aave Labs, which is it's pretty cool, and allows also the DAO to cover all the needs around the DAO, because the more you grow and the more years you accumulate, the more stuff there is to maintain, more stuff there is to build, and so on and so forth. So
cool.
I think it's going to be exciting years going forward.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining me, and thank you all for listening in.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. What a
Good one.
Yeah.